What Queen Camilla just realized behind closed doors is that a lifetime of strategic social climbing can be publicly dismantled by a single perfectly executed seating chart. In less than 24 hours, what was supposed to be a triumph of global networking at a highly televised state banquet became the most humiliating institutional reprimand she has ever faced. The realization was immediate and freezing as she walked into the grand ballroom under the glare of international cameras. She looked toward the sovereign's table, fully expecting to see her son seated among world leaders and powerful tycoons. Instead, she found him banished to the absolute periphery of the room, leaving a glaring empty chair directly beside her as a televised warning. Despite the crown on her head, she was just brutally reminded that the core bloodline controls the room. This is the story of a cold diplomatic purge executed with terrifying administrative precision. Today, we are going to unpack the quiet systemic counteroffensive launched by Princess Anne to neutralize Camilla's audacious attempt to hijack a state banquet. We will examine the secret logistical maneuver Camilla used to insert her non-royal son into the highest echelons of international diplomacy. How the Princess Royal uncovered this staggering exploitation of state resources and the silent, ruthless retaliation that followed. Most importantly, we will look at the chilling psychological climax that left the Queen Consort completely isolated on the world stage, realizing that her 30-year campaign has been permanently blocked by the unyielding rules of royal protocol. To understand the absolute devastation of this moment, we have to rebuild the illusion of absolute power Camilla has enjoyed over the past few years. For 3 decades, she played the longest, most patient game in modern royal history. She survived the intense public fury of the 1990s, methodically outlasted the hostility of the old guard, and watched the total institutional erasure of Princess Diana's legacy within the palace walls. She slowly and carefully replaced the ghosts of the past with her own loyal courtiers, her own favorite press contacts, and her own family members. By the time the crown was placed on her head, surrounded by her non-royal grandchildren, she believed the transition was entirely complete. She believed she had King Charles completely controlled and that the institution had finally surrendered to her will. In her mind, she had successfully transformed the British monarchy into a vehicle for her own family's ascension. The grand state occasions felt like a personal dinner parties. The sovereign's diplomatic weight felt like a tool she could freely distribute to her inner circle. This is the profound danger of surviving a long, bitter war of attrition. You begin to mistake sheer endurance for absolute authority. Camilla began to operate under the dangerous assumption that the entire machinery of the state was now permanently structured around her comfort and her commands. She expected the blood royals to quietly step aside, assuming they were too exhausted or too afraid of upsetting the king to challenge her quiet administrative maneuvers. The trigger for this current crisis began just weeks ago, hidden far beneath the surface of the intense preparations for an incoming state visit. A state banquet is not merely a dinner. It is the ultimate strictly monitored theater of international hierarchy. Who sits where, who speaks to whom, and who is granted access to the sovereign's table are matters of profound geopolitical weight. Camilla recognized this as a rare golden opportunity. Driven by the commercial desperation of knowing her constitutional power expires the moment her husband's reign ends, her office quietly slipped a revised seating chart through the palace's hospitality channels. She engineered a highly sophisticated plan to place her son, Tom Parker Bowles, directly at the main table, seamlessly surrounding him with foreign dignitaries and billionaire investors. It was a quiet but unprecedented overreach. Camilla was attempting to use the diplomatic prestige of the British state to secure lucrative global networking opportunities for her non-royal bloodline. She expected the palace machinery to quietly rubber-stamp the paperwork. She assumed that by framing it as a mother's simple logistical request, no one would dare cause an administrative scene that might disrupt King's peace before a major international broadcast. If her son could sit at the sovereign's table, it would permanently anchor the Parker Bowles family into the highest echelons of global power, granting them commercial leverage that would survive long past the current reign. But she profoundly underestimated Princess Anne. The Princess Royal is not just the king's sister, she is the unbreakable protector of the crown's diplomatic integrity, and oversees the rigid, unyielding protocols that govern how the British monarchy interacts with the outside world. When Anne reviewed the final automated hospitality manifest just 48 hours before the event, the paper trail immediately unraveled. She recognized the maneuver not as a harmless family inclusion, but as a staggering exploitation of state protocol. It was a direct attempt to leverage the geopolitical weight of the monarchy for private commercial gain, blurring the sacred line between sovereign duty and Camilla's private enterprise. Princess Anne did not scream, She did not confront Camilla in the grand hallways of Buckingham Palace or leak angry tirades to the press. The blood royals operate with a devastatingly analytical and emotionally intelligent restraint. Instead, Anne went directly to the master diplomatic protocols. She utilized the strict internationally recognized rules of foreign precedents to permanently invalidate Camilla's seating chart. With a single silent administrative stroke, Anne entirely reordered the room. She instructed the master of the household to permanently revoke Tom Parker Bowles' placement at the sovereign's table, exiling him to a secondary obscured table at the far edge of the ballroom. But the true genius of Anne's retaliation was entirely visual. She did not just move Camilla's son, she intentionally left his newly assigned original chair at the main table completely empty as the guests arrived. As the heavy doors of the grand ballroom open and the global broadcast begins, Camilla walks in radiating the illusion of absolute power. She approaches the sovereign's table turning to greet the foreign head of state, fully expecting her son to step into the frame and solidify her triumph. Instead, she looks down and sees the glaring physical void. A freezing realization settles over her as she spots her son relegated to the shadows, surrounded by minor diplomatic staff. In front of the world's cameras, the trap snaps shut. Camilla realizes that Anne has just used the rigid architecture of the state to publicly amputate her family's ambitions, leaving her isolated at the center of a room she clearly does not control. As the flashes of the international press pool illuminate the grand ballroom, the public performance officially begins, but the internal reality for the queen consort freezes completely. Camilla turns slightly to her left, looking past the glaring void of the empty chair, searching King Charles's face for the familiar defensiveness that has shielded her for decades. She expects him to halt the procession. She expects him to quietly summon the master of the household and demand that her son be restored to his assigned place of honor. Instead, she is met with a devastating heavy silence. The king simply smiles, adjusting his lapels as he warmly engages the visiting foreign president, deliberately refusing to meet his wife's gaze. This unanswered silent plea does not represent a minor marital disagreement over a dinner arrangement. It signifies a permanent seismic shift in the gravitational center of the British monarchy. For 30 years, Charles was a man willing to defy the entire institution to secure Camilla's place at his side. But that is where the story changes. When presented with the master seating manifest, meticulously corrected by Princess and under the strict auspices of international treaty protocols, Charles recognized the trap. To overturn his sister's directive would mean causing a catastrophic diplomatic incident on live television. Charles made a cold sovereign calculation. The institutional survival of the crown and his own geopolitical dignity were worth more than the commercial networking ambitions of his wife's family. Camilla's ultimate realization is that her influence over the king only extends to the exact boundary where it begins to cost him his reign. To fully comprehend why this trap is so entirely inescapable, one must look past the glittering chandeliers and examine the harsh commercial desperation that governs Camilla's hidden reality. Publicly, she is the queen presiding over magnificent state dinners and draped in historic diamonds. But behind the velvet ropes, she is a monarch defined by a profound lack of independent sovereignty. Legally, the queen consort owns absolutely nothing within the royal infrastructure. She does not own the palaces. She does not command the Foreign Office. And she does not possess an independent revenue stream that survives past the current reign. Every ounce of her geopolitical weight is borrowed. That detail matters immensely because it exposes exactly why she attempted this audacious power grab. Her son operates in the high-stakes world of food writing and luxury consulting. Camilla knew that placing him at the sovereign's table alongside billionaire investors and global heads of state would grant him a permanent independent commercial anchor. She was frantically trying to leverage the prestige of the British state to secure her family's financial future before the crown passes to the next generation. But by invoking the rigid architecture of diplomatic precedents, Princess Anne effectively starved these commercial ambitions of their institutional oxygen. The loophole Camilla spent weeks carefully opening was welded shut in a single evening, leaving her family completely vulnerable to the cold reality of aristocratic marginalization. This frantic scrambling stands in devastating contrast to the quiet, undeniable ascension of Princess Catherine, seated perfectly across the sovereign's table. While Camilla desperately manipulated hospitality channels to artificially elevate her bloodline, Catherine operates with the supreme confidence of inevitability. The Princess of Wales does not need to force her family into the visual center of power because she is the future of it. Despite enduring immense personal and health trials over the past year, Catherine sits effortlessly at the right hand of power, draped in the historic jewels of the state, embodying the exact institutional dignity the crown demands. William and Anne have drawn a silent, but ironclad boundary around the sacred spaces of the monarchy, signaling that Camilla will not be permitted to auction off the prestige of the Windsor line to the highest bidder. The courtiers, the foreign ambassadors, and the palace staff see these subtle protocol changes instantly. In the aristocratic world, a modified seating chart and a deliberately empty chair are never mere logistical accidents. They are broadcasted messages regarding the transfer of true power. Servants and diplomatic advisors who once rushed to accommodate the Queen Consort's every preference are now reading the room. They look past the current reign and quietly align their loyalties with the Prince of Wales and the Princess Royal. The execution of the seating protocol was, in reality, a structural rehearsal for Camilla's eventual obsolescence. They allowed her to walk the room wearing the crown, but the moment she sat down, the architecture of the state left her completely isolated. As the state banquet proceeds, the clinking of crystal and the hum of international diplomacy fill the air, but the Queen Consort is left to stare out across the room. The grand illusion has finally dissolved, leaving behind the freezing reality of institutional survival. Camilla successfully won the long war to wear the crown, outlasting public outrage and historical resistance. But she has definitively permanently lost the kingdom. She is left to occupy a position that grows heavier by the day. Sitting at a table she does not control, relying on a diplomatic apparatus that answers only to her rivals, and waiting for a future she can no longer manipulate. Thank you for exploring this deep dive into the hidden power dynamics of the royal institution with us. If you appreciate this level of forensic emotional analysis and storytelling, make sure to subscribe to Royal Insider and join us for the next chapter.